as well as some nice probing ideas that Steph and Melanie are going to share on stress and burnout. I just wanted to give you a little bit of structure and a few heads up for our coming calls. So this year, we're going to regularly do calls at 1 o'clock Central Time on the third Tuesday of every month. And the topic next February will be, February 15th. Lenny, I don't know if you are ready to do your thing on the nature and coaching. So you can kind of fill in whether that date would work. And if not, we can put you into, we have a backup plan if you want more time.
Yeah, I saw you. I just got your email, so I will answer yes. I will do it. I'm not ready today.
Don't have to be ready today,
but I can be ready a month from now.
So Lenny, you might want to share a little preview, but he's been working on a book on nature and nature-based coaching, what that would look like, and what and how it might change our practice and what all those things are. So he's going to share some of the ideas that he's been thinking about as he's writing his book. And then in March, Sharit, nature-based coaching, is a co-author of a beautiful book called The Nature of Work, which I have in the background here. And so it's a new story of work for a living age. So I think you can see that. And so she's going to talk about that in March. So that she'll be on our agenda for March 15th. And we have, we also want to keep opening up invitations for people on our call. If you're working on interesting things and you would like to share on one of these calls, and either to get feedback or trigger interesting conversations that take your work deeper, feel free to let us know. So I'm going to pass this off to Steph for she and Melanie to talk a little bit about burnout and hope and how those things connect.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So welcome, everyone. Good to see your faces. So I'm going to just frame up our conversation a little bit, talking about what burnout is, and kind of how do we know that we've got it, and what contributes to it. So much of what I'm going to share with you today is from the book Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. Now, this book is written for women and for people who identify as women, because in addition to all of the normal stress that we feel, women also have added stressors like the patriarchy and things like what they call the bikini industrial complex, and all of the money that is sort of invested in making us look and feel a certain way. So if you want more on those topics, I highly suggest the book and their podcast, really fantastic. But there's a lot of great stuff for all of us regarding burnout in the book as well. And so the definition of burnout that we're going to use today is, so for those who feel overwhelmed and exhausted by everything they have to do, and yet are still worried that they're not quite doing enough. So I in the face of everything, I am already tired, and yet I also don't feel that any of my effort is actually getting me anywhere. So I'm going to share my screen for just a couple of slides. Oops, Chris, can you give me hosting abilities, or I'm sorry, sharing abilities?
Okay, try that now.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great.
All right, cool. And then I'm going to present. Okay, here we go. So first of all, the authors of this book, who are twin sisters, One is a psychologist and another is a choral conductor. So they came at the concept of burnout, both from their perspectives, but then also from the base of science. And so a lot of this is based on our brains and the way that we're interacting with the world. But first thing they say they do, first you have to think about and process your stress separately from your stressors. So we have the stressors that cause our stress in our lives, and they're various and numerous, which then creates the stress that we feel, which is the embodiment of the pressures of those stressors. So we often sort of think about like, oh, as soon as I get rid of my stressors, I will be stress-free, but that's not actually the case. New stressors pop up all the time. So when we treat them separately, we both then can manage our stress as well as then managing our stressors as they come up. So first, in managing our stress, they talk about completing the stress cycle. So we are wired as human beings to look out for and see threats. Back in the times when we were living amongst lions and tigers and bears, and we had to have the energy that we needed to run or what is that, fight or flight, freeze or fawn, right? So we're still hardwired in that way. We're hardwired to see those threats and run from them. Now, back when we were living amongst lions and tigers and bears, when we would run away and we would escape, we would complete the stress cycle because we would have that sense of relief and accomplishment of escaping. So we would go through the whole stress cycle. Nowadays, our threats are like the boss that we might not like, or the other things that are causing us stress. And we don't then give ourselves the chance of escape, of moving and completing the stress cycle. So the first thing that we need to do in managing our stress is on a daily basis, find ways to complete the stress cycle. Now, for those of us who have the ability and privilege and time and safe places to do this, the book suggests that we do the most physical thing that we can do as soon as we can. So if that is going for a walk, if that's doing yoga, if that's going for a run, something that helps us complete that cycle. Or whatever else you can do, like a good cry, a good laugh, some physical affection from people that we love. So something that helps us manage our stress. And the idea, though, is that we need to do this daily, regardless of the stressors that are in our life, because we need to manage our stress. So regardless of what the stressor is, we manage the stress. So then we think about managing our stressors, so the causes of our stress. And they put these in two buckets. We have tangible known stressors. So, gosh, I know my work life is going to be very busy in the next several months. And so I need to plan thoughtfully around that. The time management, I know there's an end in sight. I can see it, very kind of known, tangible. I plan thoughtfully. But then we have all of these other intangible, unknown stressors in our lives. And by unknown, we mean we don't necessarily know when they end or what the right solution is. And so for these, we need to be reframing success and failure. And we're seeing actually a lot of this in the pandemic. We used to talk about, when the pandemic is over. Right? Like as soon as we get through the pandemic, and I remember questions, on Twitter, like where's going to be your first, trip that you're going to take like after the pandemic, right? We're not really like talking that like in that way anymore, right? We've really reframed what success and failure looks like regarding the pandemic. And so now instead of getting through the pandemic, we're talking about, I know in our household, we're talking about with a toddler, how do we get through the winter in a way so that we're all healthy and have energy and things like that. So when we have these untangible, unknown, we reframe what success and failure looks like. Okay, so we've got to manage our stress. We're managing our stressors. And we have also internally in us this monitor. a monitor that is watching kind of how much effort we're making and how much progress we're making moving forward on something. And so when our effort is often outmatching our progress, that makes our internal monitors unhappy, that we feel like we are not actually moving forward, that we feel like we're doing all of these things, and yet we're not seeing the progress that we want. So that's actually a huge, like a huge part of this burnout, where we think of like, my progress is not matching my effort, or all of this effort that I'm putting in isn't leading us to where we want to be. So our current challenge, and why so many people are facing burnout right now, is that we have multiple urgent, intangible, unknown stressors happening at the same time. We've got climate change. We've got threats to women's rights here in the US, for sure. We've got, the pandemic. We also, continue to have social uprisings. So facing those multiple urgent, intangible, unknown stressors. And then the reframing that we're doing, where the goalpost is constantly moving, that we know that we have to do when faced with these things, it can be exhausting and frustrating, especially when we see, I know Melanie's going to talk about this, climate change milestones that we continue to not meet. And so we have to, and if we're constantly then rethinking what failure and success means, it's just there's a lot of frustration and disappointment there too. And because of the pandemic, we've lost a lot of the ways that we process stress, because we can't be around all of the people that we love. We can't be doing the things that we want to do. So there's a lot of things that prevent us from processing the stress as we always have been. So if you are feeling burned out right now, like, first, welcome to the club. And like the science tells you, like, of course, you might be feeling burned out right now when we look at all of these things. And so the book goes on to give, again, I highly recommend the book, but just a few things of finding innovative ways to manage our stress. I know that, we've had to learn a lot of new things, a lot of new skills over the last couple of years. And one of those skills has to be, so if I, if I can't go to the gym, what are going to be the ways that I can manage, get out that stress, feel like I've escaped, do that for myself on a daily basis. We're going to talk, I think in our next conversation, about the living systems principles that we've all talked about that help us think about progress and process differently, that things are not linear, things moved in cycles, and change, again, is not linear. And then two, the book also suggests that we need to connect with something larger. So because we're often so feeling like, again, trapped, exhausted, overwhelmed, not sure what to do next. And that the best thing that we can do is look up and out and see and make connection with something larger than ourselves. And we've talked about in this group how this group often provides that for us. Being able to connect with other folks who are doing this as well, and that kind of thing can help us too. So this is just a little frame up for Melanie, who is going to be talking about, thinking about things from her perspective and experience on this, and continuing our conversation, asking us some good questions.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to take myself off mute there. It's like the one truism of the pandemic is you're on mute, right? Thank you for the introduction, not only to Burnout in the book, but also kicking it over to me. I don't have any slides to share. I told them, the group, I was going to try not to just have random thoughts, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I agree with Steph. I really like listening to this group and having conversations. I always feel more hopeful and better after having this meeting. I love the conversations that different people from different areas can come together and have here, and it's always constructive. So I appreciate all of you for that. So my question kind of hopefully non-rambling talking, is a little bit about time. And I tend to frame a lot of things in the context of climate change just because that's my job. That's what I do. That's kind of a passion of mine outside of my job. But I think it definitely applies to any of the issues that you guys are working on that also occupy space in our minds and cause us to have stress across the boards, because they're all big issues. They're not, they're big stressors. They're not little things of, why can't I get this to work? My car broke down. Like that's a short-term kind of thing. But these things are complicated and large. And so when we come to these groups, a lot of times we talk about like processes and nature and how nature works. And a lot of times in my perception, I think nature is slow. It's evolution. And while there are changes happening, by the time you see, big changes, hominids walking on two legs and things like that, it takes a long time to really see those things change permanently. And so, again, in the context of climate change, I'm looking at things that we're doing. We've already passed some tipping points. We have tipping points right around the corner, and things that are going to dramatically and negatively change things for a long period of time, that we can't just go, oh, let's just back up to that tipping point. And, that's not how tipping points work, that we can't just make a little change and go, no, it's fine. And so for me, it's been a struggle to figure out how to deal with that issue when you have people on board, you have people that understand, you also have people that don't. And so you're trying to convince people, but even in the people who don't need convincing, that understand it's an issue, it's still an arduous process of making these changes, whether because you need infrastructure or just to change a really big process. And so I think that I can definitely put myself in the pile of having burnout. I actually almost a year ago to the day quit my job and went to a different job, which has allowed me to frame some things differently, and I enjoy, and it has helped me a lot. But from the bigger aspect of climate change, I still kind of have those same feelings that I'm just not sure how we push things forward and make things better. And so that's kind of the question that I came to our fearless leaders with, of when I have these conversations, I still struggle with that. So looking for wisdom from the group, I think. And I think that's all I have, I guess, for kind of a lead into that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melanie. And thank you, Steph. Steph, you really did a nice job framing up kind of the understanding of burnout, the difference between stress and stressors, a few different ways to manage both, and a recognition that we all could be in this place of burnout at different points in our life because of different reasons. And that women in particular have some other stressors that aren't present for men or those who identify for women as women. And then Melanie, I love your reflection and your questions about this bigger picture of climate change. As many of you know, I work in the space of climate change and sustainability as well. So I can resonate with that. What is our role and how do I have an impact? And is my effort actually having a rapid enough change on the system when there are, from a nature-based perspective of time, oftentimes there's evolutionary or things take a while to shift. And I think there also might be instances in nature, I won't give away any, where change happens more rapidly. So I guess kind of hold that question that Melanie posed. Are there ways that we can create change in a more rapid fashion? But I want to start with a question that ties both Steph and Melanie, your presentation, together. And then I believe Chris is going to send us into breakout rooms. I don't know how many people per room, probably about 4. So just checking in with yourself, the first part of this question is, where do you feel in relation to burnout, as Steph described it from this book? Noticing if you have it, if you have had it, where you are in that cycle, how you might be managing your stress and your stressors. So step one is check in with yourself. And then step two is based on where you are in this relationship to burnout. How does this impact your feelings of agency to be able to create change in the system you're operating in, recognizing you all might not be operating in the climate change space like Melanie. We're zooming that question out a little bit to say, based on how you're feeling in relation to burnout, how does this impact your agency or your self-efficacy to create change in the systems you're operating in? And I'll paste both of those in the chat if Chris hasn't already done.
Already done.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
Any clarifying questions or comments before we go into breakout rooms about the questions? Wonderful. So Chris will whisk us away into breakout rooms. Chris, how long are we going to be in there? About 15, 20 minutes?
Let's do 20 minutes. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. We have rooms of 4, except one room of 3. Oh, actually, I'll join that room of 3. So we're all 4s all the way through. And 20 minutes. So I have 22 after the hour. So we'll come back at 42 after the hour.
And just a note, if you don't feel like sharing, you're not forced to share, right? This is an opportunity for us to share, but we want to respect everybody's place. It's an invitation to participate and share, but some of you might be here to just listen and learn, and that's okay too.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it looks like a few have opted out. So wonderful. Have a great breakout group, and we'll see you in 20 minutes. Bye, everyone. Here we go.
Welcome back, everyone.
Good to see you all. Dan, you want me to pick this, or do you want to roll with it?
Go for it, Chris.
Go for it. Okay, great. Great session that I was in. I hope you all had a great breakout group. And so we're going to create a little bit of space here to have share outs from what you revealed or shared or what you experienced in the breakout group. So if anybody would like to just share, this is a great opportunity to reflect on something that really landed for you that you shared or that somebody else shared in your group, to kind of take some of the nuggets home for us here. And just a reminder, the question was really, how are you experiencing burnout? What is happening for you? And how might that be impacting your agency, your choices in the arena that you're working in whatever change system that you're working in? So, so who would like to start? Kick us off. All these shy, bashful. Yeah, Shimon.
I'm happy to share a quick reflection, which was one of the things we spoke about was, can the label burnout actually be harmful? Because if you take it on, does it add an extra thing that you're worried about? And one of the things I reflected on was, having been signed off for burnout last year and like physically unable to work, burnout was actually a really helpful label for me to communicate with myself, with other people, what was happening to me. It reflected the physical sensation of what was happening in my brain, which it felt frazzled. But I can also see how, when you just need to be getting on and you need to be doing, if your body isn't in that place where it's stopping you, sometimes you just need to keep going. And so, yeah, just the reflection on the word burnout and its power, whether positive or negative, was a useful one.
Thank you, Shimrit. Who else?
Yeah, I can also say something. I noticed it's been quite a long breakout time in the breakout, but the time flew. So I had the feeling we've only started. But there is something, a knowledge that having more physical exercise helps you to recover from stress. And putting that on your to-do list has also an impact. And we were reflecting on that, yeah? Mm-hmm. And so how to-do list, if you think about it, is something in the future needs to be done, but it's also maybe something in the past. It's taking you away from the here and now. And that was certainly an insight to, yeah, so how to manage that something is healthy without adding another stress, taking you away from the here and now, if you're not in the here and now, yeah. And I think another big thing is around this whole desire. We for whatever reason we moved into leadership. The moment you think you can control everything, or you are expected to control everything, either by yourself or by your employees, in a world that's so dramatically changing, you create a lot of stress for everyone, basically, and that may not be real, certainly not in the world we're living now, and also post-pandemic. And yeah, to change that belief, how can you lead in a different way, less stressful, relying more on the knowledge of the whole? That's the way I would put it, rather than trusting that only you need to know it. Mm-hmm. But then we got lost due to the time.
Thank you, Frank. That's great insight. Yeah, we felt like the 20 minutes went super fast. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Who else? See the chat here. Okay.
I felt like one of the good things that we talked about was kind of the framing of the different things that then lead to stress or burnout. And I'm reminded of this as Frank is talking too, just from, if you're focused on what you have changed and have accomplished and are seeing move forward, as opposed to what's not changing and what you didn't get done. And so kind of that frame of reference can help how you respond to burnout, I guess. But even as Frank was talking about the to-do list, like I like a to-do list. To-do lists make me feel less stressful because everything is captured in there for me, and I don't have to use brain space for that. But I have a friend who hates them, that like everything on the piece of paper is overwhelming and stressful. So I guess that goes into some framing as well.
That's great, Melanie. Our relationships to the to-do list, we all have different ways of dealing with it. That's good. Who else?
I can talk a little bit about our discussion.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess to summarize it, it would be to step in away from the environment that's stressing you for a short time to see if you can get different perspective by doing that, and figure out where you need to put more emphasis and where you need to put less emphasis on your activities. There was a couple of the people in our group that talked about the stepping away, and how when they got in that new environment, they intentionally became very purposeful and present in it, and tried to listen and hear and breathe, and really soak up that different environment. And I think for me, I had taken one of those trips last month, and it helped me gain perspective, and it helped me understand where I fit in the process. So, and the way I described it was figuring out the pieces of your puzzle, and where you need to work a little harder and work a little less harder, and make those puzzle pieces fit. And in doing so, that reduces the anxiety coming from the stressors and burnout.
As I'm listening,
Dan.
I'm wondering if there is a relationship between being confronted by things that we always thought were normal or true, and having to release those to live through this highly challenging time that probably isn't going to stop being challenging.
Mhm.
And so we have mourning, we have being confronted with feedback that says the way we've always thought we should lead an organization, or we should be a leader in an organization, and all of those things and rules are kind of crumbling. So one of our rules that we talked about, I was in Frank's group, was this idea that, so in the first year, a lot of the individuals I was coaching who tend to be leaders of organizations, they were rock solid in their resilience. They figured out a way to lead the organization through highly disruptive times. But in the second year, they all started unraveling. So there was something about how they showed up in the first year, which was anchored, I think, in past expectations that they held of themselves as organizational leaders. And then in the second year, they realized that all of that energy, 12 months, and it still wasn't gone. So they still had to then figure out, okay, how do we move forward here? And that's when they started kind of unraveling a bit, psychologically, emotionally, et cetera. But I think within that was a lot of loss of what it is to be an effective leader for them. I mean, that's their context that we're working in. So I'm wondering if, the burnout literature says that it is rife within all of our organizational systems, and that the great resignation that's happening across the world is connected to that. But some of the people that I know that have resigned have said they don't want to be exploited anymore by their organization. And it's not because they're in minimum paid working wages. They're executive level salaries, but they're not interested in having the burden of the organization shifted on them, and them sacrificing their well-being for the productivity of the organization. So there's something, I think, deep going on here, and I think the burnout and hope things are connected.
Yeah, that's great, Kathy. And one of the things that came up in the group that I was in was a bit about this burnout, then moving as an opportunity. Kathy, is an opportunity for my body and my mind to wake up to what are the new choices that I need to make for me, but also for the organization if I'm a leader. I just did a nature-based leadership workshop back in December. It's part of my master's program. And all of the people there basically expressed some level of burnout intensity. This is too much. And one of the things that they all noticed was also a choice, as you brought up, Steph, is how do I prioritize my own well-being within all of this? And part of that for all of them was, wow, I don't spend enough time in nature. Period. Done. Look at us all, regenerative leader, living systems people. Me too. I'm literally a nature boy. And because of the pandemic, I've kind of collapsed into my home and in front of my computer and making that choice of actually being out in nature. Then that also informs us. And we see the changing clouds and the sun going up and down. And all of a sudden we're back right with the world. Not totally, but so these choices, the opportunity is to say something needs to change, something needs to shift in my own life and in my organization. And that was a big piece for me too this last year. Yeah. I know we just have a few more. How about one more share, maybe two more, and then who's doing wrap up? Kathy, are you doing wrap up? Or yeah, Kathy's doing wrap up. So maybe one more share, and then we're going to wrap up.
I'll just make a couple comments about our group.
Craig.
We had a very interesting conversation because a number of us are what I would call professionals in helping other people deal, well, in Lauren's case, from disasters, but also interpersonal things. And then there were a couple of us that brought some very personal stories into the discussion. And speaking for myself, I talked a lot about how I've been facing unbelievable stressors, just one after the other, that are just, they've crushed me in the last 2 years on a very personal level. And in the last month or so, and the last few discussions that we've had, even within this group, I've been inspired to figure out what that means. And I keep growing to meet those escalating challenges. And I'm starting to find out that I am becoming a better and stronger person. My capacities are growing, and that makes me better able to help the people around me. I'm also noticing that because I'm so focused on these things, that the world around me is still going on. The media seems to not want to change, but it is changing ever so slightly. But even just people around me, from just running into strangers in the grocery store, people are acting differently. They're responding differently. They're doing different things. And that brings me great hope.
Oh, that's perfect final comment, Craig. This idea of hope that's brought right back into that. There's this hope for change and resilience being built, capacities. What I shared in my group, Craig, was like literally looking to my highest best. How do I get to evolve to my highest best? And these are all places that I get to learn and grow and build more resilience and capacity. So thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's really sweet. All right, do you want to take us home, Kathy? Then?
Yeah. So this is just a reminder, and we'll send out notices that Lenny is going to share some of the concepts that he's been thinking about as he writes his new book called Nature-Based Coaching, or that's the working title, correct, Lenny? So, and he shared with me his mind map, and it's pretty stunning. So I think it's going to be kind of fun to see where he takes us. And then Sharit is going to come in on March 15th and share concepts and ideas from the nature of work. The tagline is a new story of work for a living age. And so I think that will be beautifully regenerative as well. And we'll do it 1 o'clock Central Time US. So I think that, what does that translate, Martin, to UK time? Is it 1 o'clock plus 6?
It was 7 p.m. when we
7
started.
p.m. Okay, so that would be 7 p.m. UK time, and Netherlands too, right, Frank?
8 o'clock. 8
o'clock.
It's even better. Yeah, it's perfect.
So that's
after doing the dishes, then I'm available.
So I'm looking forward to our continued conversation, and feel free to invite more folks in as you want. Our purpose here isn't to build a huge audience. Our purpose really is to have good, interesting conversations that help us learn and make sense of what's going on in the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you next month. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Great call. We'll see you
Yes.
then.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Take care.